Why do you keep procrastinating, even when it's making you stressed? Why does it feel like you just can't get started, even though you really want to? And how do you finally break the cycle of procrastination without the guilt, the pressure, or that familiar voice saying, just do it tomorrow? In this episode, I'll walk you through powerful ways to stop procrastinating so you can finally feel less stuck and more in control. And yes, these actually work, because procrastination isn't laziness, it's emotional avoidance. And once you understand what's going on underneath the surface, everything begins to shift. So let's talk about how to finally stop procrastination. Hello, and welcome back to Let's Talk About Mental Health. Thanks for joining me. I'm Jeremy Godwin, a counsellor and writer, and I make better mental health simple with straightforward, no-nonsense advice to help you tackle issues and improve your mental well-being. Each Sunday, I take a deep dive into one aspect of better mental health, and on Wednesdays, I share a shorter, quick guide episode to help you build your own mental health toolkit. So, let's talk. Why do we put things off, even when we know they're important? And why does it leave us feeling drained and anxious, or even frustrated with ourselves? Whether it's making that phone call you've been avoiding, dealing with the messy drawer you've sworn you'll tidy for 6 months, or getting the big life admin task done that you keep moving to next week's to-do list, procrastination has a sneaky way of creeping in, stealing our energy, and messing with our peace of mind. So today, I'm diving into how to finally stop procrastinating. Not through pressure or guilt, but by understanding what's really going on underneath the habit and how you can respond differently. Because procrastination isn't about laziness. It's about how you manage discomfort, overwhelm, fear, and perfectionism. Because the more you put things off, the more they build up in your mind and weigh on your mental health. So if you're tired of feeling stuck or frustrated with yourself, then today I'll walk you through what procrastination really is, why it happens, how it affects your mental well-being, and what you can do about it. Because less procrastination means more clarity, more calm, and a stronger relationship with yourself. So let's start by getting ourselves on the same page with some definitions, and let's talk about what does procrastination mean. Procrastination. We've all done it. It's when there's that thing you know you really should be doing, but instead you're cleaning out the fridge, scrolling through pet videos, or suddenly feeling an urgent need to alphabetize your spice rack. It's almost like your brain becomes a master of distraction the second something important comes along. But procrastination isn't a personal failing, even if it might feel like one. Procrastination is a very human experience, and it's one that has a lot more to do with how we think and feel than we often realize. When you understand what's really going on, you can begin to shift things in a way that genuinely supports your well-being. At its core, procrastination is the act of delaying or avoiding something, usually something you know is important or necessary, and replacing it with something else that feels easier or more instantly rewarding. It's that little voice in your head that says, "It's fine, I'll just do it tomorrow," even when you know you've said that for 5 days in a row. It's choosing short-term comfort over long-term benefit, often because the thing you're avoiding feels overwhelming, uncomfortable, or uncertain. And if that sounds familiar, it's because procrastination is incredibly common and incredibly sneaky. It doesn't always look like sitting around doing nothing. Sometimes it looks like keeping yourself busy with other tasks so you can avoid the one that really matters. On a practical level, procrastination is often a response to discomfort. Maybe you're feeling anxious about starting a big project because you're not sure how it'll turn out. Maybe you're afraid of failing, or even afraid of succeeding, and Yes, that's a real thing. Or maybe you're stuck in perfectionism, telling yourself that you can't begin until everything is just right. And sometimes, if we're honest, the task at hand just isn't all that fun. I mean, let's be real here. Scrubbing the shower or replying to that awkward email probably isn't high on the list of things that you can't wait to do. The problem is that even though procrastination gives us a short-term sense of relief or pleasure, it usually ends up creating long-term stress. You put something off because it feels hard, and then you end up thinking about it constantly, feeling guilty or frustrated with yourself. And that guilt can spiral into shame. Why can't I just get it together? And before you know it, your self-esteem takes a hit. And yet, even then, it can feel impossible to just start. It's like your brain is stuck in a loop, knowing what it needs to do, but struggling to actually do it. That's not a lack of willpower. It's often about emotional regulation. Because when you're procrastinating, you're not just avoiding the task, you're avoiding the feeling that comes with it. And this is where procrastination can really start to chip away at your mental health. It creates this low-level background stress that simmers beneath the surface and drains your energy, even when you're not consciously thinking about it. It feeds anxiety, it fuels negative self-talk, and it messes with your confidence. Over time, it can start to affect your sleep, your focus, and even your mood. You might find yourself snapping at loved ones, zoning out more than usual, or feeling like everything is just a bit too much. And that makes sense because when you feel constantly behind, like you're letting yourself down or can't keep up, it wears on you. It also starts to affect your relationship with yourself. You begin to question whether or not you can trust yourself to follow through on things, or whether you're just destined to be that person who never quite finishes things. And spoiler alert, you're not. That's just the story procrastination wants you to believe. But the piece here is that procrastination isn't about being lazy or incapable. It's about fear, discomfort, and the mind's tendency to overprotect us from things it sees as threatening, even if they're just mildly boring or difficult. It's a form of self-preservation, delivered with a side order of going down YouTube rabbit holes. Understanding what's really going on beneath the surface is the first step towards changing it. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're just human, trying to juggle a million things while navigating your emotions and occasionally getting distracted by videos of a cat learning to salsa. It happens. But once you start to notice the patterns and understand the why behind them, you can begin to do something different. So now let's talk about why procrastination happens. Alright, so the thing is that procrastination usually isn't about time management. It's about emotion management, and that's the part that often gets overlooked. So we think we're just being disorganized or lazy, but in reality, procrastination is often a coping mechanism. You avoid something not because you don't care, but because it brings up uncomfortable feelings. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, perfectionism, overwhelm, self-doubt, or just plain boredom. And instead of facing those emotions, your brain takes a little detour towards something that feels safer or more soothing in the moment. You convince yourself you'll feel more up to it later. But if we're being honest, later is usually just another version of now with added guilt. Your brain isn't being cruel here, it's trying to protect you. It's just going a messed up way about it. The brain sees discomfort and interprets it as a threat. So when that challenging task pops up, your brain starts going, oh no, that looks stressful. Let's clean the cutlery drawer instead. You get a temporary hit of relief from avoiding the thing, and that feels nice. But that quick fix sets up a habit loop. Stress leads to avoidance, leads to short-term relief, leads to long-term stress. And once you're in that loop, it's very easy to stay there. This is where procrastination starts to take a real toll on your mental health. Because the longer you avoid something, the bigger it starts to feel. What was once a simple task becomes this looming, shapeless, ominous cloud of anxiety. You start second-guessing yourself. Why can't I just do it? And that self-criticism chips away at your confidence and your self-control. The guilt builds, the stress increases, and suddenly you're not just putting something off, you're stuck in a cycle of self-doubt and frustration. And that cycle doesn't just stay in one corner of your life. It bleeds into everything. It can make you feel constantly behind, even when you're working hard. It can affect your relationships, especially when the people around you don't understand why you're struggling to follow through on things. It can impact your sleep because you're lying awake thinking about the things you didn't get done. And it can quietly start to erode your self-trust, which is one of the most essential foundations of good mental health. When you stop believing in your ability to take action or follow through, you begin to feel helpless, and that feeling can spiral into anxiety, low mood, or even burnout. That's why dealing with procrastination is about so much more than just ticking off your to-do list. It's about improving your relationship with yourself. It's about learning to sit with discomfort, to face fears rather than run from them. And when you start doing that, you feel stronger. You begin to trust yourself again. You feel more capable, more grounded, and more in control, which in turn supports your overall well-being. Because the less you carry around that invisible weight of avoided tasks and unresolved stress, the more mental space you have for joy, rest, creativity, connection, and actual peace of mind. And look, it's not about becoming a productivity machine. You're not a robot, and life is not a checklist. But when you make space to understand why you procrastinate without judging yourself, and then when you take steps to change that pattern, you reduce the emotional clutter that holds you back. You start finishing things you've been avoiding for ages, which brings a massive sense of relief. You feel calmer and more focused. Your mood improves. You feel less overwhelmed, more confident, and more in control of your time and energy. And you begin to realize that it's not about being perfect. It's about learning to show up for yourself even when it's uncomfortable, especially then. So, how do you do all that? Well, let's talk through some practical ways to stop procrastinating. But first, a quick break to hear from the brands who help me create this show each week. And welcome back. Now let's talk about how to stop procrastination. First, work out what you're really avoiding. Procrastination isn't just random. There's usually something deeper going on. Maybe the task feels boring, or maybe it feels risky and you're afraid of getting it wrong. Maybe you're unsure where to begin. Taking a moment to pause and ask yourself why you're avoiding something can reveal the emotional block underneath. Once you know what it is, you can respond with more self-compassion and a better strategy. For example, if perfectionism is the problem, remind yourself that done is better than perfect. If fear of failure is holding you back, remind yourself that taking action is how we learn. Okay, next, be brutally honest with your self-talk. Sometimes we lie to ourselves without even realizing it. For example, I'll just do it tomorrow, or I work better under pressure, or I can't focus unless I'm in the right mood. But left unchecked, those thoughts create habits that keep you stuck. Instead, catch those stories and call them out gently but firmly, which puts you back in charge. Try writing down the thoughts that pop up when you feel the urge to procrastinate, then question them. Are they really true or just familiar? Next, focus on how you'll feel afterwards. We often procrastinate because we focus on the discomfort of doing the thing, but we rarely think about the relief and satisfaction that comes once it's done. So, next time you catch yourself avoiding something, Take a moment to visualize how you'll feel when it's completed. Lighter, less anxious, proud of yourself. That feeling is the payoff, and it's a good one. You can remind yourself by writing it down. If I finish this, I'll feel less stressed and more free this evening. It's simple, but powerful. Okay, next, be kind to yourself. Seriously. This isn't just fluffy advice. Procrastination is often fueled by self-criticism, and the more you beat yourself up for not doing something, the more emotionally overwhelming the task becomes. Being kind to yourself doesn't mean letting yourself off the hook. It means recognizing that you're human, not a machine. Self-compassion reduces stress and gives you the emotional resilience to face discomfort. So, practice it by noticing your inner dialogue and consciously choosing kinder words. Next, start before you feel ready. This is one of the simplest but most powerful ways to break the procrastination cycle. Waiting to feel motivated is like waiting for a bus that's not coming. Action creates momentum, not the other way around. Often the hardest part of any task is just getting started. So, try the just one thing rule. Tell yourself you'll do just one task for 5 minutes. That's it. You don't need to finish it. You don't need to be brilliant at it. Just start. Once you've made that first move, you'll usually find it's easier to keep going. This works because it lowers the barrier to entry and removes the pressure of perfection, because progress, not perfection, is the goal. Next, break the task down into manageable pieces. Big tasks can feel overwhelming. So overwhelming, in fact, that your brain goes straight into avoidance mode. The trick is to break the task down into smaller, more doable parts. Instead of write the report, make your first task, open a new document. Then write the heading. Then write 3 bullet points. You get the idea. This helps because each small step feels achievable, and completing them gives you a little dopamine boost. Write out a step-by-step list of the smallest actions required and tick each one off as you go. It's oddly satisfying, even if the task itself isn't. Okay, next, prioritize your mental energy. We all have limited mental energy, and some tasks take more of it than others. So it makes sense to tackle the harder stuff when your energy is highest, because then you're aligning your tasks with your natural rhythms. Notice when you feel most focused. It's often mid-morning for many people. And schedule your most important or difficult task for then. Save the low-effort stuff for your lower energy times. And generally speaking, use your energy wisely. Not every moment has to be high voltage, high output. Next, set clear deadlines and stick to them. When there's no deadline, there's no urgency. And without urgency, it's very easy to keep putting things off until later. Give yourself a clear deadline, even if no one else is expecting it. Then, take it seriously. Deadlines give structure, and they create a sense of accountability. And you can make them more effective by writing them down, telling someone else for added accountability, or setting calendar reminders. And if it helps, build in a reward for when you meet the deadline, even if it's just a warm beverage and a quiet moment to yourself. Okay, next, identify your procrastination triggers. Everyone has their own patterns, and certain situations, times of day, or emotional states can make procrastination more likely. This is about the importance of noticing your patterns, because self-awareness gives you the power to intervene. Try tracking your behavior for a few days. When do you procrastinate most? What are you feeling at the time? Once you spot the patterns, you can start shifting the conditions, whether that means changing your schedule, eating lunch earlier, or setting boundaries around interruptions. Next, Create a distraction-free zone. Procrastination loves distractions, and your phone, email, or television remote are often just a short reach away. So, creating an environment that supports greater focus is essential because it reduces the number of decisions your brain has to make, like, should I check my phone again? Turn off notifications, use website blockers, put your phone in another room, hide the remote, or even just tidy your workspace so it feels calmer and more inviting. Think of it like setting the scene for productivity without the physical and mental clutter. Okay, next, pair the task with something enjoyable. If the thing you need to do is dull or draining, try combining it with something that makes it more bearable. This is sometimes called temptation bundling, and it works because it adds a bit of motivation to the mix. Try listening to your favorite podcast or playlist while you do admin, or lighting a candle and making a cup of tea before tackling your budget, or rewarding yourself with a treat after you do the thing. It's a small psychological nudge that says, this doesn't have to be awful, and sometimes that's enough to get you moving. Next, use the implementation intention technique. This fancy-sounding method is all about deciding when and where you'll do something, rather than vaguely saying, I'll do it later. It helps because vague plans lead to vague action or no action at all. So, instead of saying, I'll write that report this week, say, I'll write the first 300 words at 10 a.m. on Tuesday at the kitchen table. You can even put it in your calendar. This creates clarity and structure, and it helps your brain get into gear more easily when the time comes. Okay, next, use a timer to work in focused blocks. So this one's called the Pomodoro technique, although no actual tomatoes are required. So you set a timer for 25 minutes, work on one task with full focus, then take a 5-minute break. After 4 rounds, take a longer break. It works because it gives you a clear start and a clear end point, which makes the task feel more manageable. You can do this with a simple kitchen timer, a phone app, or a website like tomatotimers.com. It's especially useful when your attention span is fried and you need structure to get going again. Next, get out of your head. When your brain feels cluttered, it's hard to start anything, and so that's where a brain dump comes in handy. It's as simple as writing down everything swirling around in your head. Tasks, worries, to-dos, appointments, that thing you meant to say to someone 3 weeks ago. This helps because it externalizes the chaos and gives you a clear picture of what's actually going on. Once it's on paper, you can sort through it, prioritize, and take action one step at a time. Okay, next, change your location. Sometimes a shift in environment is all it takes to reset your brain. If you're stuck in a procrastination rut, move to a different room, go to a cafe, work from a library, or even just change your chair. This works because your brain associates certain spaces with certain behaviors. If you always scroll Instagram on the couch, it's harder to switch into work mode there. Changing locations gives your brain a new cue, and that can be enough to help you focus. Next, stop aiming for 100%. Perfectionism fuels procrastination, and if you're waiting to feel brilliant or produce something flawless, you'll probably be waiting a long time. Aiming for 80%, good enough, is often the key to getting things done, because it lowers the emotional pressure that can freeze you in place. Remind yourself that imperfect action is still action, and tell yourself that you don't want to let perfect be the enemy of done. Okay, next, reframe tasks. The language you use shapes your mindset. Saying, I have to reply to that email feels like a burden, but I get to reply to that email reminds you of the opportunity or benefit in it, even if the benefit is just clearing your inbox or getting it off your to-do list. This softens resistance and reframes tasks in a more empowering way. So try catching yourself when you use heavy, duty-driven language and consciously shift it. It's subtle, but surprisingly effective. Next, take a procrastination pause, but make it intentional. Sometimes you really do need a break, but mindless scrolling and guilt-filled avoidance don't really recharge you. A procrastination pause is a short, intentional break you take before starting the task, not as a way to escape it. And it creates space for your nervous system to settle, especially if the task feels stressful. Set a 10-minute timer and use that time to do something constructive and intentional. Stretch, take a walk, or just breathe deeply. Then come back to your task and begin. Okay, next, use task batching to reduce friction. If you're avoiding lots of small and annoying tasks, group them together and set aside a specific block of time to knock them out in one go. Switching tasks eats up mental energy, and so batching reduces that drag. You can do this by creating a life admin hour once or twice a week, where you deal with bills, bookings, emails, etc. Put on some music, make it at least mildly pleasant for yourself, and treat it like a reset button for your week. Next, reflect regularly on what's working and what's not. Make time every week or so to check in with yourself. What helped you get things done? What derailed you? What can you tweak? This turns procrastination into a learning opportunity rather than a source of shame. You can do this by journaling, making a few notes in your phone, or even just having a quiet chat with yourself on a walk. Self-awareness is power, and the more you understand your patterns, the more control you have over them. Because when it comes to learning how to stop procrastinating, what it all boils down to is this. Procrastination isn't a character flaw, it's just a habit, and like any habit, it can be changed with a bit of awareness, intention, and self-compassion. The more you understand what's really going on under the surface, the more power you have to shift it. You don't need to get it perfect, and you certainly don't need to do it all at once. What matters is that you begin. Because every time you choose to show up for yourself, instead of giving in to procrastination, you build your confidence, ease your mental load, and create a sense of calm and clarity that has a real positive impact on your well-being. The choice is yours, as it is with all things related to your well-being. So, what choice will you make today? Each week I like to finish up by sharing a quote about the week's topic, and I encourage you to take a few moments to really reflect on it and consider what it means to you. This week's quote is by an unknown author, and it is, "The best way to get something done is to begin." Let me repeat that. The best way to get something done is to begin. All right, that's nearly it for this week. How do you deal with procrastination? Leave me a comment and let's talk. Join my free mailing list at ltamh.com to stay up to date on new topics I cover, and become a supporter on Patreon for early access to ad-free episodes and exclusive content. You'll find those linked in the episode description. Next week, I'll be talking about juggling your commitments. I hope you'll join me for that, so follow or subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Thank you very much for joining me today. Look after yourself and make a conscious effort to share positivity and kindness out into the world, because you get back what you put out. Take care and talk to you next time. Let's Talk About Mental Health is an independent program proudly produced by Reconnaissance Media.